Welcome to another edition of the Hail to Michigan podcast. I'm your host tonight, Matt, joined by Contown. Ronnie is traveling. He's in the middle of making a move, career move. So he is traveling north today. So he can't join us this week. But Contown, how are you?
I'm doing good. Got down to the Indiana game last weekend. Successful trip. Got to see Memorial Stadium there for the first time. Nice people in Bloomington. Got St. Elmo's in Indianapolis, the steakhouse. Did the shrimp cocktail, Indiana's famous shrimp cocktail. Good business trip.
Nice. So how was it? How was the overall, like, Bloomington, the game? The stadium. I've never really seen the campus. So how was that whole experience?
It was interesting. It was I don't know if it's the best campus I've been to, but it was fine. It was nice, welcoming locals and student body. I had some Indiana student. We actually got a lot of Go Blues from like Indiana students, and a couple were like, please kill us today. I've got you guys covering. So it was a fun weekend. Good people down there. Stadium was it's not very big, but all the sight lines are really good. It's kind of weird, like walking around campus. It wasn't super evident that it was a game day until you got really close to the stadium and got into like the main tailgating area. But it was kind of like the stadium was like a little nicer version of like Michigan State Stadium, I would say. Sight lines were good. A lot of Michigan fans there. It was good.
Nice. Yeah, that's one of them that I want to go to for sure. And then just like for me, it'd be really nice if it lined up one year, like with the Colts being at home. Like I'd love to see them on the way back on Sunday. It'd be a nice little weekend. But let's get into the recap. Indiana 31-10 Michigan win. We'll start on the offensive side of the ball for Michigan. JJ McCarthy has his best game as a Wolverine in terms of numbers. Running game was effective again. Overall, what were your thoughts for the Michigan offense?
It's kind of a weird day, up and down, and just I think the main takeaway or the main story of the day was mistakes that ended otherwise successful drives, especially more so in the first half. You look at the box score after the game, yardage wise, yards per play differential. This is a game that it looks like Michigan won by 35 or more. But there was just too many single plays, missed assignments, mental errors on offense that killed drives or put Michigan behind the chains when we were moving the ball really well otherwise. Totally agree that obviously objectively it was JJ's best game, but I think it was on a per play basis or just all around quarterback play, I think this was his best game in a Michigan uniform. Only a few misses on the day, even like the interception and the one slant that to Ronnie that was broken up in the end zone before the interception. Just really good coverage on a few plays where I thought JJ otherwise threw a good ball. I did think Ronnie Bell bailed him out on that one out route in the 2-minute drill, that crazy wrestling match between him and the DB where he comes with the ball.
He kind of threw it too far inside.
Dangerous throw, but if you limit those and you have great receivers, hopefully your guys pick you up on the few times you do make a mistake. But really good day. Still looking like he's improved from that Maryland game where there was a lot of chaotic scrambling. When he breaks the pocket now, it's very productive. Huge third down pickup with his legs, and obviously the touchdown to Cornelius Johnson was really nice. Really nice example of just extending the play long enough to make the play in the passing game and to set his receiver up for success. He had a throw in the fourth quarter to Luke Schoonmaker right at the sticks where he was backpedaling and throwing downfield to the sideline. That was crazy. I don't know if people appreciate how crazy of a throw that was. That was probably an inadvisable throw for 90% of quarterbacks, but JJ zipped it in there. Really good day for JJ all around. The rest of the offense, not so much. There were good moments. Ronnie Bell and Luke Schoonmaker had great days statistically receiving, and as receivers were very good. But I thought overall, both receivers and tight ends and the offensive line had bad day overall in the run game. Probably the worst blocking day for Michigan so far. And even Blake Corum, I would say, despite a pretty good stat line to end the game, probably had his worst game, and that goes hand in hand with the blocking. I think Indiana just does things, to really trigger on runs and mess with blocking schemes. It's how Tom Allen's defenses have always been. So I think that definitely affected Michigan amongst other things.
Yeah, I thought the kind of chaotic nature of Tom Allen's defense, while it was frustrating in the run game, I felt like in the pass game, that was a big kind of sign of growth. And we talked about it a little bit leading up to it, like things that JJ would get better at. And you mentioned it, just, maneuvering in the pocket, extending plays, looking to throw still. And he did take off on the one. And I think, you mentioned the one throw to Schoonmaker, but that type of throw, like, under Harbaugh recently, especially, we've seen a lot of college quarterbacks. Like Cade was a good college quarterback, or decent college quarterback, Shea, despite all the hate that he can get, made plenty of good throws in his career, college level throws. But like, we're seeing an NFL arm, and not in the way that Joe Milton was, where he could just, throw at 90 mile an hour, but not all that accurate. I mean, JJ can make every throw, and he just makes it look so effortless. So it is a little bit of a acclimation period for Michigan fans. It's like, we're not really used to seeing, and recently at least, an NFL guy. I mean, really, it's back to probably Henny, where, play in, play out, he is ripping throws. So that's kind of exciting to see, and that, there's only room to grow, right? He's in his third start and a true sophomore. So, I think it will, by the end of the year, really be humming overall the pass game. I agree with you a little bit. The run game was frustrating, part of that due to their chaotic nature, but overall, I mean, the yards per play was over 6 still. The yards per rush was still pretty good. I want to say it was like 4.5, 4, no, just 4. So not great, but it just seemed to be erratic. It wasn't a consistent. They had the one really long drive, but it seemed like they'd make a few good plays and then kind of stall out. So a little bit of a frustrating day, but overall, still a 21-point victory, and double them up in yardage. So, what were your thoughts on Barnhart as the replacement to Jones? I personally did not notice a bunch from him. Did you get a good look at how Barnhart played?
Yeah, I thought he was fine. It's clutch that he's healthy. It's such an important piece for Michigan, that sixth offensive lineman they've had for pretty much every year under Jim. It seems like you've got a sixth guy that can plug and play in a couple of positions. And we know Barnhart was so close to being a full-time starter this year. He loses the job to Jones in camp, but he plays early and goes down with the ankle. But huge that he's back and able to fill in for such an important starter. I thought he was fine. I thought he was pretty good. He ends up playing a good amount of the game. It was right into the first half that Jones went down, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was in the last drive of the first half.
yeah, I think so. So I think it was pretty good. And I didn't notice much of a drop off. JJ had time all day. I know Indiana doesn't have the best pass rush, but I think pass block was good, and I didn't notice him as the culprit in too many misses in the run game. So I thought it was pretty good. I think he's a guy that probably will play at a high level as he gets more game reps. I think he's someone you've always heard coaches say great things about, and he could be one of those people that just he doesn't practice as well as Jones does, but you get him acclimated in the starting lineup, and I think he'll be just fine.
Yeah, I agree, and it's interesting, right? Because with that right tackle spot being manned by Stuber last year, that kind of right side was kind of the cave it in, heavy right-handed run.
Yeah.
And I felt like they, when you're choosing between Jones and Barnhart to replace Stuber, Jones is excellent in the run game. And Barnhart, they say Jones is more athletic. They say he's the most or behind Zinner, the most athletic lineman. But Barnhart, in terms of pass pro, seems to be a little bit more natural there.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that now both of our tackles would probably lean, if you're saying which one they're better at, probably in the pass game, both of them, and then kind of the maulers in the middle. So I think, with the passing game kind of ascending, I think that'll actually end up benefiting them during this little short stretch that Jones may be out. And who knows, when Jones is healthy again, maybe they're rolling with Barnhart a little bit. I could see that being the rest of the season type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you hate to see a guy get Wally pipped, but if Barnhart comes in and excels and they find their groove on offense, I don't think that's something you change up. And I hope this isn't the case, but truthfully, Jones's injury didn't look like something you come back from in a couple of weeks. I think Harbaugh said high ankle sprain, but even if that's true, it's probably 3 weeks is like best case scenario. It's probably 4 weeks. So Barnhart will have time to prove himself.
Yeah, especially for a big guy too. I mean,
right.
Yeah. High ankle sprain when you're trying to, protect on the edge is, especially with some of the team, especially Ohio State at the end of the year, that some of the guys will see off the edge. You can't be wounded at that spot. That's for sure. So, anything else on the offense before we head over to the other side?
I did want to say, like, I'm sure this affected the entire team, but Mike Hart going down, I don't think anyone is discounting it, but it definitely shouldn't be discounted in terms of analyzing Michigan's play on the day, especially just being in the stadium. Like, the vibes were really weird. I know that's not necessarily the high level football analysis that people want, but like just felt weird in the stadium when he went down. You get the prolonged stoppage in play. It's obviously it's a scary situation for even the fans in the stadium, but like for the guys on the sideline that witnessed their coach having a seizure, for the guys who specifically the running backs who play for Coach Hart. I would be hard pressed to say that had no effect on Michigan's play in the first half, even though that's certainly not any. There's no way to quantify that, but it was just a weird period. One of the weirder periods I've sat through in a football stadium. Nobody in the crowd knew what was going on. You clearly see the really intense level of concern on Michigan's sideline. People on Indiana's sideline running over to help. Obviously, he was just coached at Indiana before Michigan, so it was just weird in the stadium for a while. And I think you talk about trap games. I don't think anyone thought Indiana was a trap game for Michigan, but like it just kind of places a fog on the game when something that weird and something that much more important than football happens.
Absolutely. And I think offensively, I think they did play better in the second half. So,
yeah,
what kind of effect you can have when I believe they mentioned that Coach Hart called at halftime or they basically got, hey, he's all right. They got some news at halftime, and that can kind of, refocus the team because, they showed the TV camera showed. I mean, Donovan Edwards was in tears. I mean,
yep,
that is a huge emotional swing that, like you said, it's hard to quantify the impact, especially on the offensive guys. I mean, the whole team obviously is involved, knows him, but those offensive guys are with him every day in meetings and things like that. It can really shock the whole team. I don't know that I've ever seen anything like that. So hopefully Coach Hart is doing well. I mean, all of us remember him very fondly as a player, and now as a coach, and one of the more likable Michigan guys. So hopefully he's doing better and gets everything taken care of, and then is eventually able to return. We're all thinking about Mike Hart. So with that, let's switch over to the defensive side. Pretty outside of the annoying screen stuff in the first half, a pretty dominant day for the defense. Just over 200 yards given up on the day. 3 yards per play. Got to the quarterback a ton. I mean, that was just consistent throughout the game. What were your thoughts on Michigan's defense on Saturday?
I thought it was pretty good. I think whenever you play a Big Ten game and give up only 10 points, you shut out your opponent for a half. You hold your opponent to under 4 yards per play. It's hard to categorize that as anything other than a good day. As far as conference opponents go, this could be the worst offense Michigan sees outside of Iowa, but it's still a Big Ten offense. It's still an annoying offense to deal with the screens. They want to go fast. They want to throw the ball 60 times. They'll run, little tricky, fakes off the screen with a blocker released on a wheel. So it was a good job Michigan did. Maybe even a better job than they were expected to do against this offense. And overall on the day, hard to say that was anything other than a huge success. Bazelak, the Indiana quarterback, not just the 7 times Michigan did actually get a sack. He was getting hit and certainly moved off his spot on most passing plays. And again, this might be the worst offensive line Michigan sees in conference, but it's still a Big Ten offensive line. It's still certainly stands out the level of success that Michigan was able to have getting after the quarterback. And once Michigan got ahead, this is just not an Indiana team that's built to come from behind, especially when they're already at a talent disadvantage. So a couple leaks in the run game. I think, maybe halfway point here. I don't know that I can say that the interior defensive line is looking as good as I thought it would be this year. I think they're fine. I don't know that Massey Smith has looked like a dominant, senior number one freak in America yet at this point, but I think it's fine. I mean, Indiana didn't light us up on the ground. There were a couple leaks where I thought we just got moved by double teams, but on the whole, Indiana ends up with 19 rushing yards. Most of that is due to the 7 sacks, but yeah, if I'm nitpicking, running, if you get Michigan into a light box when we're in our nickel package, I think, maybe some of the better offensive lines will potentially have some success against that. But that's certainly not Indiana. I don't know who that's going to be until maybe Illinois, but maybe not until Ohio State. So not a lot of concerns for me on the defensive side. Some bad officiating also helped Indiana get to 10 points. So good day.
Yeah, I think my concern in the run game is more at the second level. I thought both Mozzie and Jenkins did get reached on a couple of the bigger runs, but I thought some of our gap integrity on the second, third level wasn't great. I still don't think Barrett is. He's not bad, but he's just not all that consistent. And Colson is kind of the same way. Colson's issue is more in the pass game, but just kind of knowing what you're seeing and trusting it and going on the right side of blocks is something that they've struggled with at times. So that's an area that they can improve. But I certainly think the run defense will continue to get better, because I agree. I don't think Mozzie's been as dominant as expected, but the linebackers can help some of that a little bit too. So I thought the defensive backs played another pretty good game. Mm-hmm. It seems like Makari Page has certainly moved into the starting role at safety, and the pass rush, while their offensive line was not great, had a huge impact on this game. So overall, I thought it was pretty good. Still dialing up some things that are really affecting offenses. I'm thinking of the slant pass where Oki was in the passing lane, where he dropped from his edge spot, and it seems like they've done a pretty good job of disguising that and switching that up to where a quarterback has a kind of a quick or a hot read when he sees pressure, and opposite side edge drops into the throwing lane and impacts him getting rid of the ball. So I thought Minner had another pretty solid day overall, and just Mike Morris is someone who I want to talk about a little bit too. I think there were concerns coming into the year about his ability to play on the edge, and he has been probably better than I anticipated. I thought he played well last year in kind of a jack of all trades role, and I think this year he's really He's dominant against the run, and he has developed substantially as a pass rusher to kind of be the most consistent defensive lineman I've thought throughout the year. So, guy doesn't get a whole lot of credit, but I think Mike Morris has ascended like they said he had in the offseason. So,
yeah, I think he leads the Big Ten in sacks right now.
yeah, I want to say I saw that as well. Like he's got 5, and that's the conference leader, 5 sacks.
Yeah, so, he's doing great.
Yeah. I saw Scott Bell had an interesting stat that we have 10 more sacks or 8 more sacks this year through 6 games than they did last year. So that's a little shocking when you see that. But
I will say to that effect, I know a few Michigan fans have picked up on that this year or this week. Correct me if I'm wrong, 7 sacks against Colorado State, right? I'm trying to find the number right here.
Yeah, I think it's 7 against them and 7 against Indiana.
Yeah, so 14 of the 22 have come against probably the 2 worst offensive lines. We'll see. Maybe Indiana's offensive line is better than Hawaii and UConn. So I think there's a little fool's gold there.
Yes.
But it is still a feat to get 7 sacks against a Power 5 team. A Power 5 is especially Indiana is a top 50 talent team. The offensive line that they throw out there, they've got a Michigan transfer on their offensive line. So it was a great day getting after the passer. I would still probably take one of Aiden Hutchinson or David Ojabo if yes, we could have them. Yes. But yeah, I think there's a little nuance to that 22 versus 14 number that I've seen going around.
Yeah, I think if you did kind of opponent adjusted and say, if you said Colorado State and Indiana, if you put an average line there instead of what each of them put out there, maybe take away 3 sacks in each of those games, or whatever. There's no specific number, but it's just like, okay, I agree. It's a little bit fool's gold, but it's probably, I would say the pass rush is a little behind where they were at this point this year, despite the this point last year, despite the numbers. But, it's not as big of a drop off, I think, as people expected either. So I think it's kind of, somewhere in the middle of what the expectation was. And then, what the stats will say. I think it's probably, not as good as last year, but still pretty good.
Yep, agreed.
Okay, let's move on to Penn State. Obviously, the biggest game of the year to date. Iowa was expected to be huge, but that was kind of lost its luster a little bit leading up to the game. Penn State's top 10 opponent, bring in 6-year quarterback Sean Clifford, bring in another top defense. They've been pretty consistent on that side of the ball the last few years. Let's start with Penn State's offense. What are your keys to the game on Saturday, and what are you looking for when Michigan's on defense and Penn State has the ball?
Yeah, so this is a Penn State offense that is improved from last year, but is still really not great. You look at some of the more advanced metrics. People are talking about they've improved their run game a bit. I think it's maybe a little better, but they've really struggled to run against some of the better opponents that are defenses they've faced. They didn't run very well against Purdue or Northwestern. And I think, Nicholas Singleton is very talented, the 5-star freshman back. Katron Allen is as well. I think they've added good players at the running back position. I don't know that they've improved too much up front or improved schematically. So I would say, the running game is against Penn State is mostly about tackling. Don't let Singleton for sure will hit the home run if you let him. His stat line right now is kind of bolstered by the big runs he was able to break off against Auburn and Ohio. And Auburn particularly, I got to watch a chunk of that game. They're just so poorly coached on defense. Their run fits were terrible. And I think most of the country is wondering why Brian Harsin hasn't been fired yet, when everyone knows that's going to happen. So for me, I think this is a Penn State offensive line that is not much improved from last year. They might be a tick better, but you bring back Caden Wallace at one of the tackle spots, and he's still a liability there. And I don't think the guards are much more than average. So this is at least on the ground. This is a tackling game for Michigan, and that's easier said than done because that's what at least I was saying before the Michigan State game last year. And Kenneth Walker is still breaking tackles against Michigan somewhere. But this you bottle up, you tackle well, you have proper run fits, and I think this is a huge advantage for Michigan. In terms of the passing game, it's familiar faces. They bring back Sean Clifford. They bring back Parker Washington. They still have Brenton Strange at tight end, and Keandre Lambert-Smith. These are a lot of names we've heard for 4 or 5 years now. It feels like they do lose Jahan Dotson, which is a huge loss. Great player, but this is still a team that wants to, somewhat similarly to Indiana, they'll line up in a lot of 11 personnel, a lot of 4 wide with the tight end, a lot of screens. It's classic Mike Yurcich.
Yep.
Is that the first name? Mike Yurcich. He's been there for a couple years now, which everyone says is big for Clifford, but still don't think it's a super efficient offense or an offense that is running the ball as well as maybe their season totals suggest. This should be honestly of the two, offensive versus defensive matchups. The Michigan defense against the Penn State offense should be Michigan's big advantage in this game.
Yeah, and one of the things we were really concerned about last year going into the Penn State game was the tempo stuff. I think the number going into last week, they were the second fastest. They were running over 2 plays per minute. Indiana was the fastest, at just over 3. So that's always a concern, is tempo, especially when we haven't handled it all that well the last 2 years. I mean, last week against Indiana it was fine. But last year against Penn State, I felt like they handled it a lot better than they did against Michigan State earlier in the year. So I agree with you on the running game. I think that running game in 2 years will be horrifying. I mean, it'll be much more of a concern now, currently as it stands. This year, you mentioned the offensive line. I think you're exactly right. The tackling is just going to be a big thing. I think Michigan will be able to dominate at the line of scrimmage or control the line of scrimmage. And it's just going to be a matter of, can we get those guys down when we deliver linebackers and safeties to them? The receivers, Tinsley, the transfer, is a good player as well. Mm-hmm. He's from Western Kentucky, I believe.
Yep.
And Parker Washington, I think, is their best receiver. I think he's a little bit different than the guys of the past. I think he's more of a kind of a possession guy, despite not being very big. He's not like your KJ Hamler or your Jahan Dotson, where you're just horrified of him, one-on-one with a nickel, if we get any zero coverage.
Right.
I think he's a very good player, and I think he'll have a good day, but it's not as terrifying as some of the guys they've had in the past. And their tight ends, they go 3 deep at tight end. They don't use as much 3 tight end as they did last year. Actually, their third guy caught a touchdown against Michigan last year, Ty Warren.
Yeah.
And Theo Johnson would be the second one. They've got good players. For Clifford, it's just going to be a matter of, can Michigan get to him consistently enough? Because, we've seen in the past with him, when he's under a lot of pressure and taking hits, he's not nearly as effective, like most quarterbacks. But if Michigan can win that battle at the line, and last year that was where the game was won. I mean, they just could not block Aiden. And Ojabo as well. They just dominated the game and just put it on ice in the second half for Penn State's offense. So, good offense. I don't think it's as good as the numbers suggest, and the numbers aren't. If I remember correctly, they're in like the 40s on S&P Plus, like 46 offensively.
Yep.
So, I certainly agree that Michigan's big advantage should be on that side of the ball. Anything else on the Penn State offense before we move over?
Not really. Just to give a benchmark on that, 46th, Maryland is the best offense Michigan has seen per SP Plus. They're 16th. And the difference is about 6 points against the average defense. That's how Bill Connolly works SP Plus. So Maryland about a touchdown better on offense against an average Division I team than the Penn State offense. So they'll probably be the second best offense Michigan has seen thus far, but a pretty big gap between them and Maryland.
Yeah, and that's a good point to bring up. Just give you an idea of where they're at and what to expect. And I think it's kind of similarly built to how Maryland was. The skill play. Maryland's offensive line I thought was better, and their running game not nearly as good. But receiver wise, I mean, 3 to 4 guys that are pretty good players. Penn State usually prefers to do 3 receivers and a tight end, but nothing anywhere close for either one to like an Ohio State or someone like that. So good offense, but certainly something that Michigan should be able to handle pretty well. So let's switch over to Penn State's defense. New defensive coordinator Manny Diaz, after almost 5 years of Brett Pry. And I know we were both big fans of Pry. Diaz, a little bit more aggressive than Pry was, in terms of blitzing on early downs. I haven't seen any advanced numbers on that, but just from watching them, they seem to be a little bit more aggressive. Pry was very much a base defense where you just get very good athletes and let them play. Defensive line wise, they're very light on the edge. Linebackers, still some pretty good athletes back there. And their secondary has, at least coming into the year, had, if you're ranking by conference, they were probably the second best secondary in the conference, preseason rank wise. So, what are your thoughts on the Penn State defense?
I think you got to start probably with the secondary. As you mentioned, coming into the year, they probably were the second. And I think some people might make an argument that as of today they're the best. I would say there's certainly an argument to be made that they have the best cornerback tandem between Joey Porter Jr. and Kalen King. Kalen King is a guy from Cass Tech that a lot of Michigan fans wish was wearing maize and blue. He's really good. He might be having a better year actually than Porter. Outside of the two studs at corner, the secondary is, I would say, good, not great, above average, maybe even the safety play. They kind of have a few safeties they rotate in. Jair Brown seems to be a mainstay, but you have Jalen Reed, Jonathan Sutherland, who's been there for a while. He's not as good in coverage. And both him and Reed are more hybrid run support guys at the safety position. And so, this is a game where Michigan might get pretty good coverage on a few of our receivers, but you should be able to exploit this secondary and this back seven in the seams and with the tight ends. Big day for Luke Schoonmaker, big day for Roman Wilson. Hopefully he's back and healthy because this is a linebacker and safety crew that can be had in coverage. But throw it Kalen King at your own risk.
Yeah, it's odd that at linebacker especially they lost. How do I just blank on his name? Cameron Smith.
Yeah.
But linebacker specifically, they've really targeted athletes there.
Yeah.
And like Curtis Jacobs was a great athlete in high school. So interesting that they've kind of targeted athletes there, and they're not great in coverage, but they do a lot of subbing at the linebacker level. Elsden is listed as the starter at Mike, but they play Jonathan Sutherland a lot there. They play Abdul Carter a lot. He comes in as more of a pass rushing role. He's been great as a true freshman. So they do a lot of package stuff defensively, whereas in years past, really, that was one of the things that we would talk about and leading up to a game is like they're just going to move Cameron Smith over the slot, not really bring in a nickel. And now they do a lot of five defensive backs, subbing at the linebacker level. So again, similar to their offense, good players. No, outside of like you mentioned already, the corners, no true standouts, outside of those corners, but a good unit all the way around. I believe they're one of 5 Big Ten defenses that are ranked in the top 10 on S&P Plus.
Mm-hmm.
I think Michigan will have some openings in the run game. Both Chop Robinson and Adisa Isaac are lighter guys for the edge there. And then PJ Mustipher has not played nearly as well this year as he did prior to the injury last year and then the year prior as well. So, I think there's going to be quite a bit of running room for Michigan's offense. I just feel like it's going to be a run heavy game plan. If I had to guess, and then take their shots when they're there for sure. But I think they'll try to lean on that run game a lot, especially early in the game.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think this is a game where in a front where Michigan can be successful on the ground, and probably will need to be given the strength of the secondary. But you mentioned PJ Mustipher. He looked great last year before going down, like one of the better defensive linemen in the conference, and just doesn't seem to have fully, found that level of play again post injury. PFF really doesn't like. Pro Football Focus really doesn't like Curtis Jacobs either. This is a front that Michigan, and you mentioned the 2 defensive ends. They're much more. They would much rather see an offense try to throw so they can get after the passer than see Ryan Hayes and Carson Barnhart flying off the ball right at them all game. So I agree. I'd expect Michigan to make Penn State prove that they can stop a high end run game like Michigan thinks they have before they go more pass heavy. Chop Robinson, I think he's good, and Adisa Isaac. I think Penn State has good pass rushers, and they're certainly blitzing more with Manny Diaz and mixing up their looks a little bit more too. more stand-up rushers, more kind of amoeba fronts on passing downs. But interestingly enough, they get a lot of hype in terms of how they've been able to get after the quarterback. Penn State is only 87th in sack rate nationally on defense. They have gotten to the quarterback 5% of defensive snaps. Michigan, for comparison's sake, is 9th nationally at 10%. So Michigan, who we just talked about, probably not as good as they were last year at getting home, is actually getting home twice as frequently as Penn State's defense. So dangerous dudes, but I think the lack of great interior play on the D-line and the need to bring numbers helps quarterbacks still get the ball out on time. So if this is a game where Michigan can find success on the ground, the ability to take shots off play action, and the ability to get the ball out in the run control game to Roman Wilson, as Penn State devotes more bodies to the box, is going to be there.
Absolutely. Anything else on, I guess, either side or overall for the game? I think we talked a little bit prior to recording. Just there is a little bit of unknown to each team. Given the competition played, Penn State's probably played a little bit better competition. But not much. I mean, there's just a lot of unknown for both teams, and Maryland might be the best team that either Penn State or Michigan has faced. The best of any opponent. So, any other overall thoughts on the game before we get into prize picks?
Yeah, not really. I mean, kind of just exactly what you just said. Maryland, I think, at least per SP Plus, is the best team that either team has faced. Next would be Purdue, and after that, Iowa. So
yep.
It's kind of like I think Maryland is just ahead of Purdue, and then Iowa is slightly behind Purdue. So kind of a tight grouping there, and even of those three opponents, it's kind of hard. We don't necessarily know what to make of those three opponents either. So and Penn State really, man, should have lost that. Purdue had probably 15 penalties in that game.
Yeah.
That seemed like the pick six really sealed the deal for Purdue, and then Penn State goes on that killer drive. So I think this is a game where if you took away the opponent's logo and their record, I would say I would feel better about it, but it's hard to not feel nervous at all for an undefeated Penn State team, whether that's home or away or what. It's a big game. It's a big brand, national TV. It's a lot of intrigue, and both programs are going to find out a lot about themselves this weekend.
To calm your nerves a little bit, do your James Franklin after a bye stat.
Oh yeah, no, should absolutely share that. So James Franklin in 9 games after bye weeks at Penn State is 3-6. On the flip side, Jim Harbaugh has had 7 games at Michigan before bye weeks and is 6-1. And I do like that stat kind of speaks for itself. But I do think, given, if Purdue is the best team that Penn State has played, I think Michigan is a heck of a lot better than Purdue. Yeah. And it would not surprise me if Michigan really controls like the first quarter, especially because Michigan is not coming off a bye, and it's been 2 weeks since Penn State's played football, and they have last played football against Northwestern and Central Michigan. So this is a huge step up, and I don't think they're gonna just tuck their tails, but it's a lot to come off of rest and face this Michigan team in Ann Arbor in a maze out. So yeah, Jim Franklin,
Oh no.
James James Franklin, um, not the best planner when given time to work on an opponent.
Yeah, and I just with the way the other games, between Penn State and Michigan in Ann Arbor have gone, outside of the COVID year, it's been very much in Michigan's favor, even dating back to the last Hope game. I think you said combined score was like 109-30 at the games in Ann Arbor. So
yep.
None of those are all that relevant come Saturday, but I think, the four outcomes, a big Michigan win, a close Michigan win, a close Penn State win, or a big Penn State win. The only outcome that would surprise me would be a large Penn State win.
Yep, I agree.
So, I wouldn't be shocked if it's a tight game and, comes down to the last possession. But I also wouldn't be shocked if Michigan beat them pretty comfortably. So it's just from that aspect, it's a little bit nerve-wracking, but at the same time, it's like, if Michigan, provided they don't play horribly, which you'd never go into a game expecting them to play horribly, provided they don't play horribly, I expect them to win. So with that, let's get into the prize picks and the game prediction. What do you have for the prize picks this week?
So we could start with JJ McCarthy, over under 230 and a half passing yards, 230.5 passing yards.
I'm going to say, before I give an answer, last week, I'm pretty sure we were exceptional on the prize picks. I meant to go back and look at the numbers, but I think we took over on all the Michigan guys, and I think they all hit, unless Quorum. Was Quorum over 100? I thought Quorum's might have been like low 100s, and he only had 90 something, didn't he?
No, Quorum finished with 120, 125, okay. 124. Yeah.
Okay, so he went over. JJ definitely went over, and Ronnie Bell definitely went over.
Yeah, I may have taken the under on Ronnie Bell to be different. So if I did, that's what I get for playing devil's advocate.
Yeah, as long as you say just to be different, we'll still count that as a correct pick.
Yeah.
So okay, but I would say under for JJ this week, just because of what we discussed with the run heavy approach. I think he'll have a good game. I could see him going over, but I think it's going to be more similar to the Iowa attack, where it's run heavy and he has more of a good, efficient day than like a 300-yard day.
Yep, I agree. I'm going to go under as well. That 230 number is probably pretty close. It's probably like 245 or 225. If I had to throw something out, I don't think Penn State has allowed a 300-yard passer. Even the pass heavy Purdue, Aiden O'Connell was only like 280 on the day. So I think JJ will be right around 230, but I'll say just under that. And I agree with everything you said. It'll be due to Michigan's success on the ground.
I think Aiden O'Connell had over 50 attempts too, like maybe even close to 60, if I remember correctly.
It was a super inefficient day, and I think that lends to JJ going under here even more. I don't think Michigan's going to force anything.
Yeah, Michigan certainly will. If you have to take a bet to the bank, they certainly will not throw over 50 times a game. In this game.
Speaking of the run game, I can go to Blake Corum here. Over under 104.5 rush yards.
Over. I don't think their defensive line Uh, over. I don't think their defensive line will be able to hold up. I just think they're going to have some big gashes in the run game.
Yep, I agree. Over. You can pretty much bank on Blake having something over 25 or 30 on the day. And with one of those and the success that we think they're going to have on a down-to-down basis, I think 105 is a pretty easy number to hit.
Yep.
I would say he's probably in store for a 120 to 150 day.
Yep.
Ronnie Bell, over under 59.5 receiving yards.
I'll say over. If we're expecting JJ to be, right at that 220, 230 mark, 60. Yeah. Ronnie Bell, I could see having a fourth of the yardage, more than a fourth of the yardage. So, yeah, over. Just barely.
I'm going to say under. Doing the same dumb thing I did last week, but no, I really think this will probably be a game for the tight ends, and I think Roman Wilson will have his opportunities as well. Whether they might move Ronnie around, and certainly they'll see zone looks from Penn State, but as often as Ronnie and Cornelius are matched up with in man with one of the corners, I think their targets might be more limited than normal. So I'll say under, spread the ball a little bit to the slots and tight ends here.
Ronnie is the slot.
He was against Indiana. Will he be when Roman comes back?
Yes, he's been the slot when Roman's been out there.
Not early in the year. The run game control, they love throwing with Roman in the slot, or the run control game, sorry, with Roman in the slot and Ronnie blocking on those bubble routes.
Agreed, but when they're not running bubble, Ronnie's in the slot.
Yeah, so that's my prediction. I think it's going to be a big game for that. I think the success on the ground is going to lead to Penn State starting to crowd the box a bit. They did that a lot against Northwestern. And I think you're going to see a big return to the run control stuff with Roman Wilson.
All right, fine. Be wrong.
Interesting one here. Over under 1.5 field goals for Jake Moody.
Save it for my score prediction, but over.
Yeah. Same here. Same preview to my score prediction, and same reasoning, but for that reason I have to go under.
You're gonna have the same score prediction as me, and I'm gonna be mad.
Well, Ronnie, our Ronnie has a very similar score prediction. We're all right together on this one. Let's see if we get a few for Penn State here. Over under 210.5 passing yards for Sean Clifford.
210 seems really low.
Yeah.
God, is he going to be able to get the ball out, though? Is it 210 or 210 and a half?
210.5.
I was going to say push. Over. That just seems so low. I really want to say under, but it's going to be right there.
Yeah, I'll say over. But man, his numbers on the year are this is set at a good spot. He's averaging 206 yards a game passing. So, and some of that has been due to the success they've had on the ground. Certainly the Auburn game, throwing for 178 yards. They ran on Auburn all day. The Northwestern game, only 140 yards passing. It was really an ugly game. But yeah, no, I'll say over. Something like 220. And then let's go to Penn State run game. Over under 60.5 for Nicholas Singleton on the ground.
I'll say over. He's been over 100 twice, 87 once. Yeah, I'll go over.
I am going to say under. Yeah, that's a tight number, but I just think they're going to struggle to run against Michigan. I think it's the best front they've seen by a mile, and they'll rotate. They'll rotate as well with Katron Allen, and they'll run Clifford. So I'll go under. And with that, we can jump into our score predictions here.
All right. Ronnie is up first. He sent it first in the group message. So Ronnie's score prediction is 31-20 Michigan. What do you have?
So I went back and forth on this a little bit. I think 31-20 is about exactly what SP Plus has. It might be 32-20. And SP Plus has about 76% win probability for Michigan. ESPN's FPI has it about 73. So right around that 3/4 mark, in terms of win probability. I feel decent going into this game. I always trust Jim Harbaugh in a home game against anyone not named Ohio State, and I do kind of think Michigan separates themselves at some point in this game, whether it's, like I said, early, just kind of Penn State not having played a opponent of this caliber yet, coming off a bye, or just pulling away late with wearing them down in the run game. So I'm going to say 31-17. Kind of think that Michigan coasts in the second quarter a little bit. Maybe a late touchdown by Penn State makes it look even closer than it is.
Yep, I had 34-17. Michigan cover, Michigan win. One of the other stats that you mentioned earlier in the week, not counting the COVID year, Michigan is 38-2 as home favorites under Jim Harbaugh.
Yep.
Both losses, I believe, were Michigan State. The 2017 and was it 15? Were they favored in 15 too?
Yep, favored by 7 and 15. I forget the number in 17, but yeah, the only two losses Jim has in Michigan Stadium in front of a crowd is both to Mark D'Antonio, both to those weird Michigan State games. So yeah, that's a pretty indicative number. You mentioned the kind of four possibilities of who can win this game and how. It does feel like it's going to be a Michigan win. The question is it going to be a nail biter that gives me a few gray hairs in the stadium, or is it going to be a 2018 redux?
Definitely. Looking forward to a good game. As always, we appreciate you listening. For Ronnie, Contown, and Matt, we are looking forward to another big win in Michigan Stadium this Saturday. As always, go Blue.